Hello, welcome back again to Off the Shelf Book Talk with Book Lovers. I'm Elizabeth Nelson, here with Kay Johnson as always, and we're going to talk about what's new in the reading world with us. So what have you been reading, Kay?
Well, I have been busy. I usually read Kindle Unlimited books that can range in quality from, like great to not so great.
Yes.
But I bit the bullet the last couple of weeks and I have bought books.
Wow.
So I started with Righteous Prey by John Sanford.
Okay.
That is the 32nd book, 32nd
Okay.
book. He has two series, there's the Virgil Flowers series and the Lucas Davenport series. And the last two books, he has combined them into one.
Okay.
And so in Righteous Prey, it's good. I really like these books. So it wasn't really that hard of a decision to pay $14.99 for Kindle version. But it's interesting because a group of wealthy vigilantes come together and they want to kill bad guys.
Gosh.
And they're like Bitcoin billionaires, these guys. And they met at a Bitcoin convention.
They're not inspiring a lot of confidence yet.
And so they decide to kill people who are just bad. And, and the thing is that they're sort of thrill seekers because they have all this money and they've done all sorts of things, but this is like the ultimate. And so all of a sudden, bad people start dying. And when one is killed in Minnesota, that's when Virgil Flowers and Lucas Davenport get involved. And Lucas Davenport just can't stand the idea that someone thinks they're smarter than he is. And so he and Virgil and, all these law enforcement types go after him. And it's got a great and interesting ending.
Okay.
And that's really was, I don't know if it's set up for another book.
Okay.
Or what, but if you like John Sanford's books, I did not enjoy his last one.
Okay.
I thought it was too much of a police procedural.
Okay.
And not interesting and kind of offbeat the way they
Too many
usually
facts and not enough story.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this one is definitely John Sanford.
Okay.
And so if you're a fan of his and didn't like the last one, do read this one because this one is back on track.
Okay.
So what have you read?
Well, I took a little break for a little while from regular books, and on Netflix, Neil Gaiman's The Sandman came out and was kind of the big thing. And so these are, originally they are comics that Neil Gaiman wrote and had illustrated. And so I decided, because I wanted to know what I would be getting myself into, if I watched them, I would read some of the comics. So that was kind of fun. Read something a little different for once. Alex wanted to know why he couldn't look at the comics because they were put out by, I think it was called Vertigo, which is like the adult section of DC Comics.
So no Alex.
No Alex. Little violent for Alex, but for people who aren't familiar with the concept of the TV show or anything, the Sandman follows Morpheus, who is the king of dreams. And so he was held captive, and he breaks out and is looking for stuff and taking over back control of his dream world. So they're interesting. I read, I think, two big. They're called what are they? They have a big name for them when they're in the big brick, but it's like one of those giant books that like Hermione Granger smacks down on the table in Harry Potter. So big tomes. But they were really enjoyable. I had to send it back. I didn't get the next one because I think there's like 4 altogether with all of them. But you got to kind of pace yourself on comics. But they go really quick, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And then I read a book called, it's called The Appeal by Janice Hallett. And the way this book is interesting, so it's a set, how the book starts out, it's these 2 girls who work at a law firm. I think they're paralegals or legal assistants, and they're given all of these, they're like emails, letters, text messages, diary entries for a murder that has occurred around a community theater production.
Oh.
And trying to figure out if the person that's currently in jail actually did it or what's going on. And I thought it was really interesting. First of all, I think it's fun to kind of read. I read it because it was like a collection of short stories, or like not short stories, but they're emails, text messages, newspaper articles. So it's like putting through and trying to piece together what the actual storyline is. And then throughout, you would have like the correspondence between the two ladies would go back and talk about what they just read and then like how they tried to piece it together to kind of form the story for you. And I thought it was really interesting. There were several big twists that you then kind of had to stop and then go back and then re-look at how it affected what you'd already read and had kind of gotten to know. So I liked it a lot. Couldn't put it down. It's one of those I sat up and read. But yeah, they're putting on All My Sons was the name of the show they were putting on, and there's like an event to raise because I think it's the director's granddaughter comes down with cancer, and there's a charity, the charity issues involved, and all kinds of weird kind of things that played in. But I really did enjoy it. I had to kind of hunt for it because originally I wanted to get it and it wasn't available overseas yet. I didn't realize that when I put it on my request look, but I did enjoy it. So I like those kinds of solve it yourself books.
Another book I read is this one.
Ta-da!
And Daniel Silva is just a great author. He brings out a book every year, and it's always the third week in July, Tuesday of the third week in July. And this is, I believe, his 22nd book that features Gabriel Allen, who is an art restorer and a spy and assassin. He was originally an art student in Israel when Ari Shamron, the head of the
Mossad?
Recruited him to be one of the assassins of the terrorists who killed the Israeli athletes in Germany.
Oh, okay.
During the 72 Olympics, I
Munich?
think.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the series begins. Okay. Art always kind of plays a role in these different, because he's an art restorer. Typically, he's working in Venice. Okay. And then he'll get pulled off a painting job to go and chase bad guys. But in this book, Portrait of an Unknown Woman, it is an all art book.
Oh, good.
And it's about, he is retired from being head of the Mossad and is living with his wife and twins in Venice. Okay. And he's taken a sabbatical and he's kind of not doing anything. His wife says, he's just got to relax, which is not happening. But he somehow gets involved. His friend Julian Isherwood owns an art gallery, and he's actually a Jewish guy, and had his name changed and escaped from France during the war, and then was raised in England, and then owns this gallery, and then it really became kind of a front for the Mossad in England, and so he and Gabriel go way back. And anyway, he made a lot of money selling a painting, and it was a big deal. Well, he gets a letter in the mail from a lady who wants to talk to him about this painting. It's always bad news, he figures, because... Yeah. And what ends up happening is there's actually 2 of these paintings. Oh, no. And there really can't ever be 2 of these paintings. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is Gabriel follows the paintings. And it's a great read, and I stayed up late to finish it. And if you like Daniel Silva's books, it's a great one. It's like the way he used to write. Sometimes his books get deep and, they're more tomes on politics. Oh, okay. Yeah. But not with this one. This one is just really a fun read. Okay. I finished the new Ruth Ware book. Oh, what came out? The It Girl. Oh, okay. So this one,
This book, a lot of Ruth Ware's books kind of go back and forth in time. So this book follows Hannah and her husband Will, and Hannah's roommate in college was murdered, and Hannah came back and found them, and she saw a guy coming down the stairs who had been giving her trouble, and so he's convicted and went to prison for life for this crime. And so Hannah has kind of tried to move on with her life, and she works in a bookstore now, and she's pregnant, and she never went back to college. And the book starts out where she finds out that the guy who was convicted of the murder has died in jail. And he died in jail always saying that he was innocent. And so and then after he dies, this reporter shows up. And so so the book goes back and forward where she's going around, because the conviction was pretty much because she saw him coming down the stairs. They didn't dig into anything else. And so she's going back and forth now, digging up everything, trying to figure out what else could have happened. And then also the past is leading up to everything that happened up to the event of the murder. So Ruth Ware's, she's your mystery. She's kind of becoming a little bit of a mystery queen. She's gotten pretty popular.
Yeah, I think she's got some weird stuff.
There are a few that I didn't like, but when they're the straightforward mysteries, like the death of Mrs. Westaway, this one is pretty much straightforward. Everything gets wrapped up with that nice little bow, which is always good. But
yes,
she still throws in her twists that she's known for. So I enjoyed those. But
so have you read The Bullet That Missed?
Is that the third one? No, I have not read it yet.
It is so good. For those who may not be in the know, we're talking about Richard Osman's book series. The first one, The Thursday Murder Club. The second one, The Man Who Died Twice. Mm-hmm. And then the third one, which came out in September, The Bullet That Missed.
I'm on hold for it.
Well, I actually bought it. Oh. And I owned it for like 2 weeks before I cracked it. Uh-oh. Because I knew once I started it, I wouldn't be able to quit, and then I wouldn't have it to look forward to. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, it is a fun read, and I was totally depressed when it ended because I thought, he supposedly is going to start a new series. Okay. And then he's going to continue this one, but he's taking a break. Oh, okay. So it might be who knows how long before we get another book with this crew. Mm-hmm. And I think you were on the message link on our phones when my sister Jill and your aunt said, "Oh my God, Ruth has been kidnapped."
And then I right away shouted out, "I haven't read it."
I haven't read it either yet. And so it was like, "Oh my God, Ruth has been kidnapped," and that happens really fast. It's like the first chapter, and so it is pretty interesting, and it's it's got all the returning characters. Yeah. And the only thing that's a little sad is Stefan is slipping further into dementia.
Yeah, that was hard with the last one, the second one,
Yeah, and this one is more so even.
At least it's not as much as like in the first book where she doped him up.
Yes.
In the first book, because she wanted to be going around solving the murder and didn't want him wandering off, so she doped his tea. So he just
and in this one, Bogdan is sort of his keeper.
Yeah.
And Bogdan has a girlfriend now.
Uh-oh.
You'll be really surprised when you find out who it is.
I might just have to order it off Amazon, bite the bullet, and tell Tom I'm ordering it.
I have to say that I literally was up till 3:00 reading it. Okay. I just couldn't put it down, and yet I didn't want to finish it because what was I going to read then?
Yeah.
So if you're a mystery fan and you haven't read Richard Osman series. Please do so. They're popular. You can get them at the library in ebooks or hardcover.
Yep, and the audiobook is really good too. Because the Thursday Murder Club, the first one, I listened to the audiobook.
Okay,
and that
so
was
they're
really
on
good.
audiobooks
Yep.
too. So
Yeah.
there's lots of ways to get a hold of this book. And so
Yeah.
if you want, you can be placed on the list. I think there's a hold on each of the books. So it might be a while, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Good. Well, I took a little break from mysteries for a while because there's a new reader in our house, Alex. And we've moved beyond Little Blue Truck, and we have now started his first real, series of books. He's very excited. Mary Pope Osborne has the Magic Tree House series. And so this is the story of Jack and his sister Annie, who are wandering through the woods by their house one day, and they find a tree house. And when they climb up into it, it is full of books. And one day, by accident, when they're looking through these books, his sister is pointing at a picture and says, "I wish we could go there." And the treehouse spins very, very fast, and suddenly they are there. So each book follows them going on a different adventure, helping Morgan Le Fay from Stock Books for Camelot's library through the ages. So they travel all over the place looking for books. They've been to the Amazon. They've been to, with dinosaurs. Right now we're reading, what is it? Vacation. We are reading Vacation Under the Volcano. So they just landed in Pompeii to save a manuscript.
So how many books are there?
There are 37 in this series.
And are you reading them in order?
We are reading them in order, and we are currently on 13.
Wow, that's a lot.
He got the first 20 for his birthday.
Wow.
But they're perfect. Each book is 10 chapters. And so if you read one chapter a night, you get a book in a week and a half.
And is he okay with that?
He does. He remembers. I have to remember he's a new reader. But Alex took all of these books and he went through, and on every chapter he dog-eared the page on the book. Folded down the top corner for every single chapter in these books. And I'm sitting here going, if you wanted to mark the pages, I would have given you bookmarks or little tabbies or something. But no, he's dog-eared all the pages. And the reader in me is just like, don't dog-ear the page. Don't dog-ear the page, Alex. But he's very excited.
Post-it notes.
I will. I'm going to have to get him something because it's just they
have post-it note tabs because I use them.
Yeah, I know, but he would take it, I think he would take it very to heart if I was like, you can't do that to your books. I think he would be like, oh no, I'm in big trouble because I turned down the pages in these books, but.
Well, you could just do it.
But yeah, if I found the original, they come in 4-packs, the box sets are 4 books, and I'd found the first one at Target because Becca read them all. I think they started coming out after I had aged out of that age range or whatever. I was one of those kids in middle school that had the high school, college comprehension reading levels. So my accelerated reader books were this thick. I never got the easy books, which was fine. But he's really enjoying them, and I'm having a lot of fun reading them to him. So they're nice. Tom gets bedtime every once in a while, and he's like, I have no idea what's going on in these books. And I'm like, well, you get the chapter with the stuff that actually happens, because then I come back and I'm like, well, how did they get the book? When did this happen? And Alex is like, well, Daddy read that last night. And I'm like, Daddy read it.
So do you trade off?
Sometimes. Usually, since we have the 2 kids, we sort of divide and conquer. And Alex has been kind of big on mommy doing bedtime recently. So I've been doing a lot more of the reading, and then Archie doesn't read yet. He doesn't even care if you read the books. He just wants you to turn the page and point. He wants to point at the pictures right now. And you will wind up looking at the same book 7 times if you just sit there with him in the book. Mom, I think, read The Little Engine That Could about 12 times to Archie in a row because she kept having to flip through it with him. So, but it's fun to think more readers.
Yeah, that's true. I'm big on reading.
But yes.
So, to break up all my mysteries, I have read a couple nonfiction books.
Oh, okay.
One of which was called 537 Days of Winter.
Okay.
By a guy named David Knopf.
Okay.
And he is a a project manager for one of the research facilities on Antarctica.
Okay.
And it was his first season doing this, and COVID hit. So
Okay.
they had to extend. And that's how it was 537 days.
Oh, gosh.
And so he talks about all that. And it's an interesting book because I've always found Antarctica to be a really interesting place. And I toy with the idea of saving money and actually going there. But I think I just like to drive by. I don't think I really want to get out and like...
Did you ever read, what is it? I'm gonna have to look it up. There's a book where the girl wants to go to Antarctica. I can't think of it. Her mom goes missing. They made a movie out of it too, Kate Blanchett, and I'll have to think about it. It has to do with Antarctica. But
no, I don't think I have. That
no, the only reason I can remember it is you might want to rethink it, though, because you have to take a ship to get to Antarctica, and it's apparently a very, very rough and tumultuous sea.
Yeah,
so that's why I think you and I would be.
Yeah, we couldn't.
We would have to be put into like a coma, medical coma, to survive.
Yeah, it's called motion sickness.
Yes.
So that book is interesting because the people who go there and work, sign up for X amount of time, like a summer season, or they winter over, and these folks ended up staying a year and a half because of the fact that they couldn't leave because of
Where'd
COVID.
you go, Bernadette? Where'd you go, Bernadette? That's the name of the book.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, well, I will look at that. And so this is interesting. So it's we all experienced the pandemic. We were all required to wear masks. We were all required to live at home. Well, these folks on the Antarctica weren't exposed to anything.
And we're stuck.
So they were all fine, except when people came. And so then they had to figure that all out. So it's interesting, a different viewpoint on the pandemic. Then the other book I read, A Southerner's Reckoning with the Myth of the Lost Cause, Robert E. Lee and Me, by Ty Seidule, Seidule. And what makes this book really interesting is I'm a Civil War buff, and so... I've walked the battlefields. We've been to Gettysburg. We've done a lot of that. A relative was buried at Chickamauga in Georgia. Another was buried in Chattanooga. So this is something we know a fair amount about. And what's interesting about this book is this fellow grew up in the South, was a solid Robert E. Lee fan, went to Washington and Lee University, and joined the Army through ROTC, and then ended up teaching at West Point.
Okay.
So I asked your dad if he had him as an instructor, and he said no. But what he talks about is racism in the United States.
Okay.
Because anytime he's paralleled that when integration is happening, that the myth of Robert E. Lee is raised. And it's an interesting thing. And the book I really, really highly recommend the book because this guy really didn't see anything wrong with his vision until he married a woman from the North.
Oh, okay.
And in the chapel at William Lee University is literally a testament to Robert E. Lee. And she told her husband, I can't be here.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is Robert E. Lee fought to prolong slavery and to continue that system. And as we all know, it's a bad, bad system. And so once his wife kind of raised his awareness, he started
his eyes.
And so he talks about West Point, talks about the Army, talks about Washington Lee University and all these things. And it's really interesting because we have the Statue of Liberty that says, give us your unwashed and unwanted. And
your poor,
Yes. And in reality, we don't want anybody who's any different than we are. The frozen chosen, so to speak. And so if you really want to read a thought-provoking book, I highly recommend it. It's got really high ratings, like 4.8 on Amazon.
Okay.
But it came up in something I was reading, and someone referenced it, and then I looked it up. But I ordered it for your mom, and your dad ended up reading it, which I thought was interesting. And his first comment was, he didn't go to West Point.
You're like, I didn't say he went to West Point.
I didn't say he went to West Point.
I said he was teaching there.
I said he taught at West
Point.
Point.
You gotta, but you know Jim Lauer, he's...
Well, and the thing that was funny about it too, or not funny, but interesting is Jim Lauer proposed to my sister Lynn Johnson at Lookout Point at West Point, which is a incredibly beautiful spot overlooking the Hudson River. And anyway, during the presidency of Richard Nixon, he wanted to build a Confederate monument there at that spot. And the reason was so he would get the vote of the Southerners.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it was derailed and postponed, and it never happened. And so the other interesting thing that came up is, and I did not know this, did you know there's a Confederate memorial at Arlington National Cemetery?
No.
And one could argue, should Confederates be buried at Arlington when they weren't members of the United States?
It's true.
You know, it's a very contentious point, apparently.
Right, yeah, I could see that.
And so there's a lot of things that I had no idea about that he brings to attention, and it's interesting and thought-provoking. So again, I really encourage people to reach out to Southerners Reckoning with the Myth of the Lost Cause, Robert E. Lee and Me, by Ty Seidel. And the interesting thing is that he says is the South lost the war, but they won the narrative.
Yeah, I could see, yeah.
You know, because they always talk about what a gentleman Robert E. Lee was, you know, and how honorable he was when he signed the papers of you know, when they gave up, when he was defeated. But I will always respect your dad, because he was the one at Chickamauga in Georgia who announced to his class that Robert E. Lee should have been hanged for treason. And it was mostly Southern good old boys in that class. So he's lucky he wasn't hanged. But nevertheless, the more you read, the more you agree.
Exactly. And the more you learn.
Yeah, exactly. So I encourage anyone who's interested, that is really an interesting book. And if you do choose to read it, please reach out to me and tell me your thoughts. I'd like to know.
Yeah. Well, and since we're at the end of our time, if you do read the book and want to let us know what you think you can reach out to us on Facebook or send us an email at www.offtheshelfbooktalk@gmail.com. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.